Welcome to CEC online lecture. Students, in today's session, we shall learn about the next important stage in the personal selling process, that is demonstration. But as the stage of presentation and demonstration is very well interconnected and interlinked, I would give you a quick recall of the preceding stage that we did last time, that is sales presentation. We learned that presentation is mainly a discussion of the features, advantages, and benefits of the product or the service being offered so that the customer understands how the product would be useful for him in terms of providing him need satisfaction or a solution to his problem. All in all, we learned that presentation helps the prospect in becoming aware of his problem or need. It proves that the company or the brand is capable of providing you with a product to take care of your needs or to solve the problem of the prospects. It, by and large, motivates or persuades the prospect to act promptly by buying the product and using it. We also discussed, students, that there could be number of presentation strategies that can be adopted by the salespeople in this regard, like stimulus response approach, formula approach, where you gradually lead them through the ADAS stages, the need satisfaction, where the salesman try to get a grip on the dominant need which is bothering the prospect and present product as a solution to the problem or need satisfaction. And we also discussed the approach related to consultative problem solving. We also deliberated on the fact that each of these approaches may have their own advantages and limitations, and probably what is best for the salesman is to develop a combination strategy, that is depth selling, where you would be slowly and gradually adopting different approaches and blending them together in order to make your sales effective. We also discussed, students, that companies therefore present the salespeople with 2 or 3 approaches that they can use in this regard. One is the canned approach, where you provide the salespeople with a memorized sales talk that covers the main points, or you also present them with a formulated approach, which is based again on the stimulus response thinking and identifies early that there is a buyer need and a buying style, and then we use the formulated approach to make it more effective in terms of the buyer that we are dealing with. So it is not a canned approach, but it follows a general plan. And we also discussed that in some of the cases, the salespeople may resort to another approach, which is the need satisfaction. We also looked at the gross question of whether the salespeople should be resorting to an adaptive technique or they should be following a canned approach, whereby we discussed and came to the conclusion that none of these approaches are devoid of any sort of limitations. Though the traditional salespeople rely on a very standard form of a presentation, those that are more experienced and successful, they may like to make their sales presentation more effective by adapting it to the needs and the requirements of the prospect. So it is by and large up to the salespeople to decide what kind of approach they would like to follow. And the best presentation often tends to blend both the approaches, that is the adaptive as well as the canned one, for achieving the most effective results. Now, in the backdrop of this, we would now be discussing about demonstration. Now, students, let us first of all understand what is demonstration. So, in very simple terms, it can be defined as a situation or that stage of the selling process where the product or a proposition is presented and the prospect is shown the benefits that await them. Now, it is said that prospects want to see, hear, feel, smell, and taste a product before making a purchase decision, which means they want to actually analyze the offering holistically. Therefore, it becomes very important for the salespeople to involve as many of the prospect's senses in their demonstration as is possible. Now, why do we demonstrate, or what is the purpose of demonstrating the product or the proposed solution to the prospect? So, students, just presenting something without showing the actual product may not make that kind of an impact on the prospect. So, if we were to identify some of the areas where the demonstration actually turns out to be a very effective stage of the entire selling process, we can understand that the demonstration stage actually goes hand in hand with presentation. By demonstrating the product, the prospect gets an opportunity to actually hold the product and experience, or what can we say is feel the product. Also, salesman can show the features or the benefits of the products or its attributes in a very clear-cut manner because it is there in front of you. Therefore, all in all, what you are doing, a salesman is in this kind of a situation actually showing the product to the prospect in action. So, how it works, how it functions, what are its benefits, everything can be displayed and demonstrated very clearly. So, in the subsequent stages, if we take care of the demonstration well in hand, at this point, we would find that it would help us in overcoming the sales resistance of the prospect in the subsequent stages. So, in a way, we can sum up by saying that the stage of demonstration is of utmost importance because it supplements and reinforces the sales presentation. Now, having said that, students, the overall sales presentation can naturally be improved with demonstration aids like providing them with the booklets, flip charts, audio, video, slides, movies, samples of the products, even computer-based simulations. The essence of the entire demonstration is that to the extent that the buyer can see or handle the product, he or she is actually going to remember its features and benefits better. So just talking about the product without demonstrating it or without actually having the product in front of you may not turn out to be that effective. However, the necessity for demonstrating everything possible during the presentation should not be emphasized too strongly by the salespeople. Why? Because you just have got limited time at your disposal, and the salesperson has to make most of that particular time which is being allotted to him. So if you start presenting and demonstrating each and everything and each and every aspect of the product, probably you won't be able to effectively wrap it up. So you just focus on demonstrating those aspects of the products which are probably critical in getting you a favorable response from the prospect. Now, if it is feasible, the prospect should participate actively in the demonstration. And suppose if the salesperson thinks that he is projecting a very laid back kind of an attitude, then the salesman is required in that particular case to motivate the prospect and to make certain efforts in terms of roping the prospect into the conversation and into the whole exercise of presentation and demonstration. Now, during the demonstration, students, it is seen that the salespeople can actually draw on certain influencing strategies. Now, what are these influencing strategies? One is legitimacy. Now, here we mean that the salespeople, they emphasize the reputation and experience of his company. This is generally devised as an influencing strategy in those cases where the company is a strong brand, the company is really known. Okay, so by talking about the company and by talking about the goodwill, you are trying to influence the thought process of the prospect, that if the company is that good, then probably the product that is being offered as a solution to the prospect's problem would also turn out to be best in class, or especially in comparison with the competing offerings which may be available. The second influencing strategy could be expertise, where the salesperson actually shows deep knowledge of the buyer situation, and not only the buyer situation, but also he exhibits good knowledge about the company's product. It's sometimes the prospect is not in a position to decide for his or her own self as to whether the product in question would be good enough to take care of his needs or requirements or not. So if the salesperson has done his homework well, and if he has done proper research, he would make use of that knowledge of the product and knowledge of its customers to come handy here, and to rope in the customer and demonstrate as to how the various aspects and the various features or attributes of the product are actually going to help the prospect in coming up with a solution, or to get the satisfaction which would be better than the satisfaction that he probably is getting at that point of time from the use of the competitive offerings. Another influence that is being exerted by the salespeople is often in the form of referent power. So they build on certain shared characteristics or interests or acquaintances. So it's say, if I were you, I would have definitely gone in for this kind of a product, or saying that, okay, I also share this kind of hobby with you, or narrating your own experience where the salesperson can talk to the prospect and can provide a complete experiential story where he himself had used that particular product. He faced the similar problem as that of the prospect, and by the use of the product in question, he has experienced, say, good results or good satisfaction, or he could take care of his problem. So you try to connect by building up on shared characteristics, or probably the traits, or probably the interests and the people that whom you know. You can also talk about those people who have bought similar product from you in the past, and you can use their testimonials to build on how the product is going to provide a satisfying experience in case of this prospect as well. Another approach is what we call as ingratiation. Now what happens is, salespeople, they provide personal favors like free lunch, or a small promotional gratuities, or some sort of a gift, in order to strengthen the affiliation or the feelings of reciprocity. Now, though this may not be an approach which is favored by some of the prospects, but if nothing seems to be working, then probably some sort of personal favors, it's a personal deep discounting strategy from the salespeople, or some extra features that you can provide so as to make them feel interested in the product, can also influence the thought process of the prospects. And last but not the least, it is always the impression management that works. So in this kind of a situation, the salesperson, he tries to convey favorable impression of himself, because if his impression on the prospect turns out to be favorable, then the probability that the prospect would end up in listening to him and would end up in buying the product that the salesperson is suggesting, that also improves manyfold. Now, as I have stated, students, that sales presentation and demonstration, this stage is the presentation and demonstration, they are not to be seen as two isolated activities. Rather, they go hand in hand. They are very much complementing in nature, in the sense that you cannot talk about presentation without having a demonstration also in the course of your presentation, and similarly, just demonstrating and not backing it up with an effective presentation is not going to work. So you have to take care of both the stages almost hand in hand. Now, for this, the salespeople need to develop an overall strategy for handling the chain of interaction with the prospect. Now, let us look at the entire planning process. Now, this planning for the sales presentation and demonstration can broadly be categorized into 5 basic stages. What these stages are: the first one begins with gathering the information, identifying the prospect's problems and needs, planning and presenting the sales proposal, confirming the sales or the relationship, building the relationship, and finally achieving the customer satisfaction. Now, let us talk about these stages in little more detail. The entire planning process, students has to start from information gathering. Now, even a very well prepared and rehearsed sales presentation may contain some tentative data and information about the prospect, so that the presentation can be planned in accordance with the same. For example, like, it would be useful to gather data on aspects like the kind of the person the prospect is, what kind of communication style one should use, what should be the different kinds of persuasive appeals that would go well with this kind of a situation or with the mood of the prospect, and so on and so forth. Now, this step, in addition to all this, that is, in addition to knowing about the prospect and gathering information about the prospect, should also gather information about the needs and the problems of the prospects, so that the presentation can be aligned to arrive at a probable solution. Now, how to go about it, how to achieve this? For this, salespeople can ask certain probing questions, and these kind of probing questions can then encourage the participants or the prospects to provide information related to their problems or their whole purpose of buying that particular product, their financial issues, the funds that they have, the limits, the needs, even their personal feelings. Now, an objective and an insightful analysis of the salesperson would also come handy in this stage. If you like, if some of these information inputs cannot be gathered, you can decipher some aspects through your observational uh, uh, aspects, like the observation made by the salespeople would also help him in discovering the underlying facts that would lead to a correct solution. The second stage actually identifies the prospects, problems, and needs, in depth. So, in this particular stage, the salesman should make an effort to uncover the prospect's problems and needs by skillful questioning and by careful listening. The emphasis should always be on the prospect's perception of his or her needs, so that eventually the salesperson can focus on presenting the appropriate product benefit. So it's say, if this is the problem, then probably this is the product benefit or this is the product feature which will help in mapping the problem with the benefit which the product can provide in a particular situation. Here, one can also resort to what is known as the FAB selling approach. Now, I'm again using an acronym here, which is FAB, where F stands for features, A stands for advantages, and B stands for benefits. Now, the selling approach that uncovers the customer needs and then present a solution to them in the form of products, features, or advantages or benefits, that is something which is going to eventually appeal to the customer. Now, when I talk about features, students, I mean all those characteristics of the product or the service that the customer can touch or see or hear or taste or smell. When I talk about advantages here, we mean all those performance characteristics that show how the product can actually help the customer in solving the problem better than the current options which may be available in the market. And by benefits, we mean all those kind of inputs that the customer wants from the product, and they must be demonstrated by the salesperson to as much extent as possible. It is basically the benefits that would make the prospect and the customers want to buy. It is the benefits that will eventually give them a reason to make a purchase. The third important step of the entire planning process is where you prepare and present the sales proposal. So instead of making a standard product oriented kind of a presentation, salesperson should customize the presentation and proposal to the client's specific requirements or specific business situation or needs and individual communication style. Now, the salesperson at this stage should adapt the entire presentation to the buyer, and we have already seen that because buyers are distinct in terms of their motives, they are also distinct in terms of their temperament, their need set. Therefore, such an alignment actually requires a due consideration of certain important areas. So in a way, we can understand it by saying that the salesperson needs to answer certain important questions, like he should actually seek answers also to these important questions, like who is the prospect audience, who is my prospect audience, what kind of benefits the prospect is actually seeking from the product that I am presenting to them, and how do the prospects prefer to communicate. Now, if students, the salesperson is going to get a correct and clear answer to these questions and rehearse the presentation in response to the answers, obviously he would have done the job well. So this is what is required, and this is what we mean when we say that the entire presentation style or strategy has to be customized according to the prospect. Now, also we need to understand that prospects do not embrace any sales proposition in one go. So even after the following this entire sales presentation and demonstration planning and adhering to each and every step and following each and every step in a proper manner, the prospect may still feel some anxiety. They may still feel anxious about the product and therefore may want a little more reassurance before they finally give in to the decision of making the purchase or provide any sort of a commitment to that effect to the salesperson. Now, this is what we would be talking about in the subsequent stage. That is how you are going to negotiate with the prospect and what kind of objections are likely to come up, what kind of reservations a prospect might still face, and how a salesperson can overcome those reservations before you can actually secure a order or you can actually close a sale. So we say that this is actually a very normal part of the entire buying selling process, just ensuring that you have everything working as per the plan and you have just presenting and demonstrated the product, and you have actually made it very clear to the prospect as to how the use and the purchase of the product is going to help him. Still there could be some reason which maybe posing a hindrance, which is very normal. This is a part of your entire selling exercise. So in a way, salespeople too have to understand that if the prospect puts up no resistance to buying, then the first seller to reach them would make the same. The first seller to reach them would be the one who would grab the order. Now, I would now, students, provide you a little prelude of the objections. I would say, why do we generally see that prospects raise objections? What can be the possible situations or circumstances in which they still feel that they need to know a little more before they can place an order? So first, students, we have to understand that usually the prospects, they raise objections in respect of the products that are new, that are unfamiliar. So if the product is new to you and you just don't know enough about it, there would be some natural apprehensions before they give into the action stage. Similarly, when the prospect doesn't understand the product too well, or some of the benefits or some of the features are not very clear to him, or it may so happen that his past experience with your brand or his past experience with a similar kind of a product may not have turned out to be pleasant enough or satisfying enough. All in all, it could just so happen that the entire connect or the entire interaction or the call between the salesperson and the prospect may turn out to be unwanted. I don't want to make any sort of a purchase right now, and therefore I'm going to raise all sorts of an objections so that I can postpone the purchase decision. Or like another situation can be where the salesperson makes some exaggerated claims and you do not believe, or you do not, or his claims do not have that kind of strength. So in those kind of situations, either you handle the objections well, or the prospect is going to say no, or may even postpone the purchase of the product. But obviously, this is not the end stage. Again, there would be certain situations, there are certain ways in which a salesman can very well handle these kind of objections. And students, in our subsequent session, we will be learning in detail about the next stage, which is handling objections. So I'm sure at the end of this session, you would have gained knowledge about how presentation and demonstration are very important aspects of the selling process, and both of these activities go hand in hand. A proper planning of the sales presentation and demonstration can naturally propel a salesperson to obtain a favorable response from the entire selling process. That is all for today. Thank you so much for your patient listening.